So, putting together a real world enterprise grade application that features agents and all this other fancy AI stuff is really cool, but it's also really difficult. What I've noticed is that a lot of demos seem to showcase what it looks like from a to do application, which is perfectly fine. But once you start to build this out and you want to shift to production, things start to get a little hairy when you incorporate guardrails and making sure that your agent doesn't run out of bounds or access data that it shouldn't access in the first place. So, in this talk, we're going to go ahead and peek under the hood to see what it looks like to put one of these in production in the context of a fun superhero based application. Let's dive in. So it might come from the world where I am just an Avenger movie buff. I love all the series, but I was thinking about the real heroes when it comes to those movies, right? And I'm not talking about Spider-Man and the Hulk, etc. I'm talking about the real heroes, the insurance agents. Because when the Hulk throws your car, you have to file that claim. And can you just imagine all the overhead that they have to deal with? So I put together this fun application here where it's insurance for a world of superhero challenges and customers that live in the MCU, that Marvel Cinematic Universe. They can come here, right, and have a lot of fun for us, not for them, and understand the different plans that they can get coverage on. They can bundle these together and form their own packages, just like how we can in our thread of the universe, right? So we have this in place, and now we're imagining a scenario where a customer wants to get one of these plans, one of these bundles in action, right? They need to talk to a customer service representative. However, when you do this, the nice thing that comes about is those representatives get busy. And so they added the ability to have agents in the mix, AI representatives. So we're going to go ahead and explore that. Let's try and get coverage. Right over here, we can get our personalized shield insurance bundle. I'm going to start a consultation. Now, immediately, this is going to kick off a workflow, an agentic flow, so that we can speak with one of those customer service representatives that can give us some feedback on what we have. Now, this is a brand new message. So we see that, it's saying hello. Welcome to this fun world of Marvel's MCU insurance services, right? This asks me probing questions about the kind of plans that we want to get in place. Great. I'm going to say, I'm going to use that Hulk example actually. The Hulk is in a battle, and I want to make sure that my car doesn't get in. Well, let's say I want to make sure that if my car gets thrown, then I'm covered. Okay, cool. So we have this in place. Our representative is thinking, and we're going to get a response here shortly. And any second now. Awesome. As you probably saw on that previous screen, we have our Avenger level property protection plan. It looks like it's perfect for a situation like ours, and we're gonna get some additional probing questions. Great. In my case, I've already looked at the plans, and I know that this is the one that I want. So I'm gonna say I'm good from here. That plan is perfect. Let's go with that. And the fun thing about AI is that I can misspell things like here at the end, and it still understands the context of our conversation and what actions to take place next. So we have this in place, and I'm kind of curious what's going to happen. Thanks. This helps a lot. I just emailed you an invoice that I can go ahead and pay and get set up with this plan. Now, funny enough, I'm going to check my email here and pull this up so we can all see it off screen, and then bring this up for you to see. And it looks like, sure enough, I have my insurance invoice, right? Thanks for choosing this plan. It gave me additional details. And the nice thing is that it's based off of the conversation that we just had. And then I can select to view and pay that invoice. Pretty cool stuff. Let's try to understand what just happened. So what I'm going to do is head back over to this application and maybe bump down the screen size a little bit. I'm going to visualize that experience that we just walked through. So I'm over here, and this is the Orkes platform where I set up this workflow. But essentially, I knew that when a customer submitted a request, we were going to have some message history, right? We had some global variables that we wanted to keep track of. And I went ahead and populated those. So, you know what? These are our insurance plans. And simple enough, right? We just have a price and then we have the name of the plan itself. Nothing too crazy. So we have that. And then in terms of additional variables, our agent needs to keep a sort of running record of the messages that come in. So I set up another variable called message history. And then lastly, based off of the conversation and based off of the plans that we have, our agent is also going to keep track of a plan bundle. What best suits the customer based off of what we have. So we have that in place. And as that workflow ran, I can come down here over into the executions to really get a fine grained understanding of every iteration that we just went through. So effectively, we have a do while loop. If you think about our code, things run oftentimes not one after the other. Okay, dogs are done barking. If you think about our code, oftentimes things don't just run one after another, but they run in a loop. And that's exactly the conversational experience that we just had over in the UI. So I mimic that with the do while loop. We can see that on the first iteration, second, and third iteration, what happened during each step. Pretty cool. Well, I know that on the first iteration, let's go to that one. The input was simply our global variables. And then the output was the fact that there weren't any messages in that message array. And so we knew that this was the beginning of a message. Now, I've structured my AI prompts to follow that sequence, right? It knows that if there are no messages, I've trained it to understand that, hey, this is the beginning of a message. Give them a warm greeting. And we'll explore that in just a second. Additionally, we have on our last iteration the fact that we sent the email invoice, and we've looked at the first iteration. You can see that we jumped into this send message loop. Pause here, quick edit. Xavier, Xavier, I'm recording. Kids, gotta love them. So now that we're in this send message loop, you can see that it chose to make that decision and come down through this series of iterations. We're going to send the message. And now we have a conversational tool that we're using to say, okay, I know all about sending messages and having a conversation. I am the customer service representative. Meanwhile, this LLM that I set up previously knows all about making the correct decisions, right? This is my decision making agent. And these are the tools that I've given it the ability to invoke. You can send an email, you can escalate to a human. We'll see that shortly. And then you can also send the message. And if all else fails, let's just kind of terminate the session from there. So we're in this send message area. This customer service representative is going to continue that conversation, ask probing questions. And again, we'll look at that in just a moment. And based off of the response that it gets back, um, it is going to append the message history and keep the conversation going so that on the next iteration, we have all of that. So we do that. I have an HTTP call that is using a WebSocket to keep that conversation from the front end to the back end going. And then from here, we simply repeat and update our variables as needed. Pretty cool stuff. But I did touch on the fact that these AI agents or these prompts, these LLMs, they have an understanding of what they should be doing. So let's dive into that. I have AI prompts, and this is part of sort of a lower level guardrail that we can start to think about. Now, the send email prompt is actually pretty straightforward, saying, hey, you're an email creation bot and you work pretty fast. Your job is to craft email invoices You can see that I can also inject variables so that it knows the type of plan bundle that we're working with. Now, the reasonings that it should be aware of are the fact that the plan message history and the current context of the situation dictates what it's going to be doing in here. Right? Keep everything in sort of an HTML format. And then for demo purposes, let's just kind of link them to that example.com page instead of sending in an actual payment invoice, right? But that could easily be a Stripe link or whatever your company would like to invoke. And then if you look at the other conversational aspect, you can see that we can chat about our insurance prompt. And this is the conversation that was happening here, right? You know all about the insurance plans, and then you go ahead and you follow up with messages based off of the conversation history. And you do it in this JSON format. Pretty easy stuff. Now, the other aspect that I want to touch on was what happens when we need to escalate, when we need to have guardrails in place. Because you can see through our invocations that we send the email or we keep the conversation going. But what happens when those aren't enough? Well, in those cases, we need to escalate. And this could be a human, another agent, etc. But I have a human in the loop centered on this example. And let's dive into what that looks like. Back into our application, I'm going to create a new flow. I'm going to create a brand new pricing bundle experience with this agent Colson. Now, inside of here, our agent is reviewing our account. I'm going to say, oh, great. This looks like another bot. Can I get a human, please? And this could happen at the beginning of the conversation, in the middle of the conversation. The point is, at this point, we need to escape out of our agent experience and get a human involved. So I'm going to wait for the response here. And any moment now, looks like it's thinking. And from a customer experience, you can see like, hey, we're typing something, right? From a backend experience, imagine that you're that customer service rep. What would you be doing? Well, you'd likely be getting a manager involved. And that's exactly what's happening here. I can go back into my workflow. You can see that my workflow is running. I'm going to click on this and see just what's happening. We're in the escalate clause. It's looking for a human. And over here, I can go over to my forms. Quick edit. It's waiting for a human. And then over here, I can click on the human task. And inside of this human task, you can see that there is, in fact, a task assigned. It's telling me, based off of our agent's interaction, the customer has expressed frustration and it's requested a human representative without providing any insurance needs or concerns. That's actually really important because it means that there isn't any context for this manager, this human in the loop, to take action on. So further automated questions may increase dissatisfaction, which is why we're here, right? It gives me the reasoning. Now, if this were a real customer service representative and a real manager picking up, you can imagine that there are several managers that could take this call on based off of availability. So I'm going to claim this. And at this point, I could look into the customer's account. I can provide additional insights to get an understanding of where they're coming from. And after I've engaged with that customer, I can mark this task as complete. And once I do mark it as complete, you can see back over in my application, it immediately gets an update published to it. And it says, okay, this sounds serious. I've gotten a supervisor involved. They'll be reaching out shortly. In this case, they already have. And the agent disconnected the chat. That's a great way to have an automated experience with guardrails in place to make sure that it's not accessing data it's not supposed to. We have strict decision making rules inside of our workflow, right? It only has the ability to access these tools: email invoice, escalate and send message. And in the case of an escalation, We can also get a human in the loop involved. Now, in this application, I've been demoing the free Orkes developer playground. However, at the end of the day, even though this is a visual experience, note that this is all JSON and it's expressed as a state's definition language that you could put into your um, GitHub repositories to have your data executed within a version controlled environment. But with that said, I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for attending this session. Hopefully you found it valuable, and we'll definitely be linking to the GitHub repo. After this session. My name is Michael Liendo. Thanks again, and continue to enjoy the rest of your PlatformCon.